common knowledge and Pokédex entries dictate that Shelmet and Karrablast evolve when electrically stimulated in each other's presence, which can be achieved most easily by trading the two Pokémon. To the contrary, recent tests have shown that no common electric-type attack can stimulate evolution. However, captive populations of Karrablast and Shelmet have managed to achieve evolution, despite a lack of major electrical stimulation. My colleagues and I have proposed a radical theory on the evolution of the two Pokémon. When fighting, Karrablast and Shelmet release a large amount of pheromones not released otherwise. These chemicals are similar to human adrenaline in that they evoke a strong fight-or-flight response, the reaction of the Pokémon being to continue their battle. The extreme force of their attacks damages both Pokémon. What is interesting is that these Pokémon store the pheromones released by the other Pokémon in special, highly sensitive glands in their bodies. When a certain level of these pheromones is achieved in the body, even the slight movement of charged ions before a thunderstorm will trigger the release of these pheromones into the rest of the body. The pheromones trigger a massive cellular response that begins the process of evolution. How each Pokémon's evolution is so morphologically similar to the other Pokémon is currently a mystery, as is much more about this process. What is known, however, is that the energy released in a Pokémon trade somehow accelerates this process, although this as well is little understood. Karrablast, upon first glance, is seemingly one of the wimpiest Pokémon one could ever hope to see. Its minuscule stature of 1 foot and 8 inches and its light weight of just 13 pounds makes sure that its pointy horn is not too intimidating. Shelmet, on the other hand, is quite a reclusive creature. The only part of its body sticking outside of its clunky shell is its face, which interestingly enough, is quite small. While both Pokémon are relatively weak unevolved, a strange thing occurs when the two Pokémon are in the presence of one another. It seems as though Shelmet gives up its characteristic armor in exchange for an agile body. Karrablast, on the other hand, trades its mobility for a suit of armor. Oddly enough, these Pokémon seem to change their attitudes as well. Karrablast no longer remains the wimpy cockroach it once was. Instead, it becomes the well-respected and fierce knight, Escavalier. Shelmet, on the other hand, loses its effeminate lips and becomes shrouded in ninja attire. Its blistering base 145 speed is simply a testament to Excelga's newfound masculinity. Could Shelmet's armor be a catalyst for this evolution, both physically and mentally? We may never know, as a full suit of armor is currently irretrievable from Shelmet, at least ethically, since this Pokémon cannot survive without it unless evolution occurs. Shelmet gathers up steel to form its shell to become an Excelga. Shelmet passes on these techniques to Karrablast so it can adapt and transform the shell and become Escavalier. We introduced Shelmet to other bug-type Pokémon that gather up items from the environment to create a protective body, to see if other species could make use of the shell in a similar way as Karrablast. One of the first Pokémon we introduced Shelmet to was Burmy. The Burmy was intrigued by Shelmet's shell and began to gather it up, but the steel weighed Burmy down so much that it was unable to move. The other Pokémon was Dwebble. This creature moved quickly into its new home of steel and was released into the wild. When observing the Dwebble, it had a tough time trying to blend into the desert with its new steel home. Eventually, the Dwebble changed homes back to a rock. Karrablast and Shelmet are a relatively recent entry into the scientific journals, though their peculiar life cycles have been known to unnerve witch doctors for centuries prior. This relationship is all the more bizarre for the fact that, until recently, the two species did not even share the same habitat, an observation that boggled ecologists. Shelmet were found primarily in the watery moors surrounding Isires city, while Karrablast were exclusively found in the grasslands far south of there. Currently, thanks to some clumsy students, the two communities have reintegrated and are currently enjoying a happy predator-prey relationship. The explanation for the bizarre phenomenon of mutual evolution remains a mystery, though that is not to say that hypotheses do not exist. One such theory suggests that the Shelmet and Karrablast once existed in the same ecosystem, and had their own separate evolution pathways, with Shelmet evolving into a slow, powerful gastropod knight and Karrablast evolving into an agile, predatory ninja beetle. However, once geographically separated, they lost the ecological need for the evolution, rather similarly to Pokémon such as Kadabra and Makoke, and could no longer evolve without an external energy input that activated the enzymes and proteins necessary for evolution. This does not, however, explain on its own why such a thing should only occur while the two are traded together. Another explanation suggests that Karrablast and Shelmet were originally a single species that underwent allopatric speciation. Their isolation caused them to differentiate into two species. This may explain why the two must be combined alongside the energy input, in that possibly some biological controls are retained in one but not the other, and vice versa, but there is no fossil evidence for any common ancestor, and analysis of ribosomal RNA sequences suggests that the two are not even closely related, relatively speaking.